episode 4, are we?
Yeah, 4.
I'm losing count already. It's a whirlwind.
Well, we missed a week. We're recording on a different day. We're all over the place.
That's true.
We don't even know where we are.
But I'm pretty sure at this point I know who I am. I'm John Kinte.
I am Holly Davenport.
And this is Moronic Evolution, right?
I think so.
And I think we've been evolving pretty well. We ask ourselves whether we have been personally, but like as a show, I think we're doing all right.
Yeah, we're changing. We got bits. We got
some features.
Audience submissions quite a bit, which I think that'll be the kind of meat and potatoes of this episode, right? We got a whole bunch of questions to answer and suggestions and stuff. So we'll make it happen.
We got that hardcore fan base of people who want to keep torturing us with questionable content, which we appreciate. Well, I do want to start by talking about the intro, which which I'm aware that we still haven't changed it from Faye's delightfully simple guitar.
Yeah, sure.
I really like it. I don't know what we're going to do, and I have written down intro. Actually plan something, which of course we haven't. So.
Well, I mean, I have some. I've been working on something.
Oh,
yeah. I've been.
I'm happy to leave it right there. Like
gathering instruments and methods to record said instruments, so that I can put together this tiny little thing that I've been working on. But that's what I got at the moment.
That sounds like a wonderful progress. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming. I just, I'm starting a new job that takes up a lot of my time. I'm already this is my second week I'm about to go into, and I'm already scheduled for 53 hours this week. So I'm gonna be busy.
That's okay. I think as you say, with the audience feedback, we're gonna have more than enough material to literally just sit down, start recording, and read some of these things out.
I agree. But yes, intro music is coming. It's on its way.
What would you like to do next?
Well, we have a lot of questions. We had a lot of audience submitted questions that we could answer. We sort of started a bit of collecting questions for potential guests.
Yeah.
I like the idea. Well, here's the thing, I'm torn, because I like the idea of gathering this list of questions to ask guests when we eventually have guests. But I like the idea of the audience submitting questions and us just kind of answering them, with our own, what we think. So I think this can kind of be a combination bit. And,
absolutely. I think us asking each other the questions, a way of testing them out, is not only a way to spark off conversation, but it's also a way of seeing if they're good questions. Because if we find the experience positive, I want to ask other people the same things.
Yeah, totally.
That's good.
So I could,
as long as those submitting know that just because they ask us a question doesn't mean we're going to be repeating it at every guest that comes on.
Yeah,
I can imagine some mischief there.
What's your social security number?
Right.
Nope, not gonna happen. I can start with one.
Sure.
This is one that Della sent me just a couple hours ago as a suggestion. She says, "What is something that you like/do that people wouldn't guess even if they knew you?"
Interesting. There are definitely things that I find out about people and I think, really? Is that? I mean, a perfect example is just last night you mentioned that you had been to a live performance of a band, and I was like, oh, what band was it? And you said, just a local band, But then you were mentioning how heavy the music was, and I was surprised because I'm into some quite heavy music, and you and I have just stuffed every waking moment of our friendship with movies and books that we haven't had time.
I was going to mention that later on in the episode, is that
to realize
we've been friends for a long time, and we talk about content, or not content. What am I thinking of? Media. Yeah. That's the word I was looking for.
Things people
we talk about media all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And we've never talked about what kind of music we like, and apparently there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah, and I was just stopped in my tracks. I was like, really? I didn't, and it's not because it didn't make sense. I just never thought of it. I was like, oh well, that's good.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good answer for me, because you have only seen me physically a few times, and I mean, people who know me in person are big 6'2" giant scary dude, long black hair, metal t-shirts. Like, I'm sure he likes metal. But if you just talk to me, like, I'm not an angry person.
Right.
I'm not like an aggressive person. I don't usually like, I don't know. I just like, I don't feel like personality wise, I seem like the person that would listen to like, my favorite song by my favorite band is called Kingdom of Guts. And the band is called Spite, and they're a deathcore band from the Bay Area. So it's like, that's my favorite band. Like, that's some of my favorite music ever. And people just, I don't know. I feel like that's something that's not super apparent to people who just like know me personality wise.
I think I have a similar experience. Growing up, I went through all of the sort of like, well, I don't know how to describe it. My sister was a couple years older than me, and she was into rock and metal before I was, and she introduced me to some of it, and I was getting Queens of the Stone Age and Papa Roach and things like that thrown at me, as well as like ska and that kind of stuff mixed in. And I was just like, oh yeah, pop punk and like this kind of grunginess and a sort of hard rock, as you call it, rather than proper metal-y stuff. And then I went deeper and I found like, real heavy stuff that I really enjoyed. And I've sort of come out to a place of mixture. I like a lot of stuff, but most of it's got guitar and drums in it. And I think often people don't see the heavier side of it as making sense for me. One of my favorite bands is Maximum the Hormone, who are a Japanese.
I love Maximum the Hormone.
I've seen them live twice. And
I'm so jealous of you.
The only times I'm aware of that they've come to the UK, I managed to get tickets. And the first time they were supporting Enter Shikari, and who I'm not a fan of. And I turned up, and it was like 14-year-olds as far as I could see, except for me and my friends. We were the only ones with facial hair, like we turned up to see the support act. So we went in and we watched Max and Hormone. They were amazing live. And then we were leaving, and they were like, "Oh, do you want your hand stamped so you can come back in?" And we were like, "Nah, we're not staying."
Nope. That's so funny.
It was great. And it was such a good experience, like road tripping to this random university down south where it was almost all students and kids. And it was great. And I think when I play that sort of thing for people where it's all growls and streams and rap metal, people are like, "Really?"
That's fair.
But I similarly to you, I have a beard and long hair, and I don't wear band t-shirts very often. But I don't hide my enjoyment of it, so I don't think anyone's ever really surprised.
Quick tangent, and then we'll get to the next question. Because Della's next question is also about music, so that's a good little segue. But quick tangent about the the t-shirt thing. A lot of my wardrobe consists of a brand of clothing called Death Saves. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It is Joe Manganiello's clothing line that are like old school heavy metal t-shirts, but they're all about D&D.
I have heard that he's hugely into D&D.
The one that I'm wearing right as we speak has Death Saves all down one sleeve. It's a long sleeve shirt. The other sleeve says Total Party Kill, and on the back it says Dungeon Master in like a super heavy metal. So it's like I get all the time. I was in the music store today, and they were like, "Oh, that's a cool shirt. Is it from like a band?" And I'm like, "No, it's Dungeons and Dragons."
Well, when he said Death Saves, I was like, "Oh, that's just D&D to me."
Yeah, no, that's why it's called Death Saves.
You mentioned Della's next question she sent you is about music. I also wanted to mention I was talking to Della this week, and she inspired me to write down a question which is also tangentially related to this.
Oh, okay.
Which was, what is something that you don't tell people about yourself until you really know them because you're worried they'll think you're lame? But then when you're good friends, it's all just part of who you are. And I feel like that really relates, like what people don't expect of you. And you're not going to say it until like you can trust them to not be like, "Excuse me, what?"
Yeah, I mean, all the things, everything.
Well,
Dungeons and Dragons,
anime. On that. I don't care about those things.
I mean, yeah, but like, I don't know. Like, I have a very good perspective on this because I just started a new job, and they're like all getting to know me, and like there's all new people who are all into different things. And it worked out well because a fun thing, another thing about my appearance is that I look fucking 12 years older than I actually am. I'm 22. People regularly think that I'm like 33. Like that's generally where they think that I am age-wise. So the first thing that happened is they found out that I was only 22, and they lost their shit because they're like, "Oh, my son's older than you." Like I get that all the time. My son's older than you. Like I get all the time. And one of the guys was like, "Oh, so you're the right age. Do you like anime?" And I was like, I wasn't sure where he was going, because a lot of the times older, like this guy's probably like mid 40s,
Yeah.
and he'll be like, the guys will be like, "Oh yeah, my son used to watch like Naruto on Toonami," and it's like, "Oh, okay, I didn't do that," like, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's sort of close to the anime I like. And he's like, "Yeah, man, I just finished Demon Slayer. I just got through
Wow.
Jujutsu Kaisen." Like, and he's rattling off all these modern anime, and he's like, "Yeah, I really liked it when they did this. I just saw the movie," and I was like, "Damn, dude, you're older than my dad, and you're just like rolling through all these anime." So it worked out for me. But I do like, I don't know, I find myself strangely closed off about a lot of that stuff, because I know that while it has become a lot more socially acceptable, it's also like, sometimes when you're talking to older people in a professional environment, they'll be like, "What the fuck? Are you like 17 years old? What's going on?"
It's definitely nerdy, but I think nerdy has become so acceptable that
Sure.
if you can find a way to relate to some kind of media, I think it's fine. Most people say, "Oh, interesting. I don't know anything about that." Because I'm in my late 30s, I'm of the age where when I was at college, when I was about 17, the only anime you could get was like on VHS.
Mm-hmm.
So I had friends who introduced me to it at that point. I watched Akira and Ninja Scrolls and all those classics like on VHS.
Nice.
So any older than 40, you're pretty much going to be too old for it at that point. You're going to be 20 by the time you get a VHS of whatever it is. And
Right.
I can totally see how anyone who is you're going to be working with of working at that age might be like, yeah, that's not a thing I do. But,
right.
Yeah.
I was super surprised when that guy was like, "Yeah, I'm into like I guess his son got him into it, and he just like, fell in love with it," which is awesome. Like, that's super cool. But I just didn't expect it. I was like, "Oh, okay, maybe I'm cool being a little more comfortable here."
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really have answers to these questions. What is something that people don't know about me, and or something I don't tell people?
I mean, you're very upfront. I don't. Okay, upfront's not the right word.
No,
you're very like open about the things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you're never going to be like, "I didn't tell you because I was embarrassed at the beginning, but I like books." It's like, no, I'm just going to talk about what I like, which I admire. I admire the hell out of.
Well, I appreciate that. I guess one spin on it might be that I meet people in where I work. I manage a library, and I get a lot of older, generally women, volunteering, and they are quite culturally removed from me, even though we're all English, so we're all saying, "Oh, hello, how are you? Lovely." It's I can't talk to them about anime or D&D or fantasy books, like they don't understand. And very often I'll get gender stereotyped as a man, so everyone's very surprised when I say I can cook. Or I'll get pigeonholed as either someone who's into books, therefore doesn't like spending time outside, or a man who obviously does practical things, therefore couldn't be interested so much in books. Which obviously both are absolutely true. I used to go camping on a super regular basis. I used to go like camping rough, like with virtually nothing but a knife and some food and a sleeping bag.
Oh wow.
I had a group of friends who we did it all through our sort of 20s. We'd go at least once a year. No running water, that sort of thing. And it's great fun. We went in February once, which was one of the coldest experiences of my life. And looking back, I don't know why we did it. But, like, I totally love that kind of stuff, as well as sitting at home with a cup of tea, reading a book, and laughing at the stupid, like like some of the movies I like. This is what made me think of it with Della is we were admitting movies and TV shows that we genuinely enjoyed, which is not quite the same as a guilty pleasure, but like it's something that you enjoy it, but you're not going to like invite anybody else to come and do it with you because like no one else is going to want to. And I have movies like that. Like I have a weird soft spot for body swap movies, especially
like the old Freaky Friday.
Yeah, especially like American high school cheesy comedy ones, and I don't know why. They're just something wholesome and simplistic about them that I can just
listen. You can just say the hot chick, like you could just say that.
I have seen it and enjoyed it. But if someone says to me, "What's your favorite movie?" There's no way I'm saying She's the Man or
She's the
know.
Man is amazing. I love
But
that
I would
movie.
never say it until I knew the person and be like, I like that one.
Someone recently told me that it was 12th Night.
Yeah.
Like She's the Man is an adaptation of 12th Night. And in the same conversation, they were like, "Oh yeah, and 10 Things I Hate About You is Taming of the Shrew."
I was
And I was like,
about to say
"What?"
that.
Like what? Like I'd seen all these films a million times, and I was like, "Oh, they're great." Just like, you know, like early 2000s, late 90s, like
Yeah.
comedy endearing.
But that's why
movies.
they're good. It's because they're Shakespearean. They're based
Because they're Shakespearean.
So they're based on fantastic writing and very
Yeah,
recognizable
that
tropes.
blew my mind when I heard it. I think it was my mom.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Damn, I'd never put that together." Anyways, we can't get too far off track. And also, if we talk about movies, Tohawk will take our heads.
That's our first strike. We
Yeah.
mentioned movies.
That's
Tangent.
right, we
One
did.
strike each.
Okay, back to questions and back to another one from Della.
Yeah.
She says in the next text after that first one, she said, "Also, since you haven't talked about music much, what is the song you never skip and could never get tired of?" This one for me is tough, not because I can't think of one, but because like I said in the first couple episodes, I'm like a super heavy fixator when it comes to media. Like I'll watch the same movie over and over again. I'll listen to the same music over and over again. Like I have regularly had playlists that have 6 songs in them, and I will just shuffle that playlist for months. I don't know. It's just a weird thing that I do. So I could name 100 million songs that I could listen to forever and never get tired of. But the one that I'm thinking of right now, and one that I just adore to death, is it's called "Driving to Hawaii" by a band called Somersault. It's this really, really relaxing, like they literally play like ocean wave sounds over the thing. It's like got this like slow surf guitar, and it's it's just like a love song, and it makes me smile thinking about it every single time. It just makes me so happy. Check it out, great song.
It sounds comforting. You know, there are definitely like the Beach Boys. I used to listen to that a lot when I was a kid. My parents would play it like we were going on a car ride somewhere.
Oh yeah, I grew up on the Beach Boys too.
Any of that like surfer, like upbeat kind of stuff, like that lulls me into a sort of nostalgic where I'm like, oh, this one. But that's not to say I wouldn't ever skip it, because there are definitely times where I'm like, nah, it's not what I'm in the mood for. I don't know what I'd answer for this. Like, there are some absolute classics like Jimi Hendrix or like the Beatles. When like a classic song comes on, you feel like, oh, I can't skip this. It's so good.
Out of respect.
A lot of the time, I will just put all my music on shuffle, and then do the frustrating thing of skipping till I find a song I want.
Oh God, that's murder. I could never do that.
But I think I've got about 7,000 songs on my iTunes, because I'm of that age where I have all the songs on my computer.
Sure.
And I can always find something. I've got such a variety and such a quite a pool to skip through that you're unlikely to get monotony or repetition through it. Yeah, I just do that, and I'm like, I could stop on any song really, or skip any song.
That's fair.
I've been really into Polyphia and
Polyphia's so good.
Tool recently.
Yeah.
And like discovering lesser known to me songs and mix them in with the more ones I really recognize, and yeah, it's great. When you get your brain like locked into that kind of style, it can be hard to then just listen to like the Beach Boys.
But yeah, no, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at a show, or I was working a show Thursday, and a super common thing, and it's super cool. A common thing with people who work in audio video and like setting up shows and stuff is like a person, obviously there's sound equipment everywhere because you're setting up speakers and microphones and stuff. So someone will just hook up to a speaker and start playing music, and everyone, regardless of what kind of music it is just like, yeah, totally, like play whatever you want. It's super cool. Like one of my coworkers was like, "Hey, have you heard of this band?" And I'm like, "No, not at all. I don't even remember the name. It was something ridiculous." And they're like, "Yeah, it's a Norwegian black metal band that uses a saxophone." Wow. And I was like, excuse me? And he's like, "Yeah, I'll play it." And then he played it in a room of like 75 people working and putting up stages and tables and microphones and running cables and stuff. And nobody batted an eye. It was the weirdest music I've ever heard. And they were all totally cool with it. But the reason I bring that up is because they started playing Polyphia and everyone was like, "This is amazing. Like, what is this?" Polyphia is so good.
Was the band Arketh?
I don't think so.
No,
I
just Googled experimental black metal with saxophone. Apparently it's more common than you think.
Really?
Well, I mean, at least 2 bands. But yeah. Polyphia, I was coincidentally, I'm going to stay with the same friends next week. But last year, I was staying with some friends, and I'd just like gotten into like my major Polyphia phase, and I was playing it on my phone. I was making breakfast or lunch or something, and I had it playing on the side in the kitchen. And one of my friends, the host, walked in, and he just looked at me with a slightly concerned face, and he said, "Who's winning?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it sounds like you're playing two bands at the same time." And I was like, "Yeah, I can see that."
That's so funny.
It's such a good description as well, because it does sound like Tim Henson's got 6 hands most of the time.
Oh God, that's brilliant. What other questions you want to do?
Well, after giving Toho a little bit of a hard time for giving us super intense questions, he's offered up some light-hearted ones. And just before we started recording, you did admit some trepidation.
I did, because I read them and I was like, "Oh God, I can't think of it. Like I can't think this quickly." Tohawk, what do you want from me?
I quite like these because although I don't think they will necessarily stick around for our like interview set of questions, they are definitely something which you get an insight into someone, how they react to the questions. The first one is, what are the best or worst pickup lines you've ever heard? And I don't think I've honestly ever used a pickup line in a genuine setting, but I have 100% had competitions of like stupid puns or embarrassingly forward pickup lines with friends.
Yeah.
But as you say, off the top of my head, I mean, like you just get the absolute classics, like, you know, did it hurt? And they're like, what?
Yeah,
it's like when you fell from heaven.
Sure.
It's like, oh, geez, how could you?
Bad,
Yeah.
wrong.
I mean, there are worse ones.
The worst one, I'll tell you the worst one I've ever heard, and I am like allergic to puns. I hate them so much.
Oh, I love them.
Oh, great. I'm glad I've engaged in a comedy podcast with you. The worst one I ever heard was, "Are you a botanist? Because I'm dying to chlorophyll you up."
Wow.
Is maybe the worst one I've ever heard.
Wow.
Yeah, not good. Bad. Quite bad.
See, that's a pun and very sexually aggressive. That together is either like, they're not going to find you sexy or funny. You've ruined both avenues at that point.
It exists in a space of in between where it is at the same time a joke and the absence of comedy.
Absolutely.
Like it's like it is meant to be a joke, like a haha funny, but also like, who in their right mind would think that that's actually funny?
I think the most common one I hear is, "Oh, that outfit looks great on you, but I think it would look better on my bedroom floor."
Nah, that's bad.
And that's another, like, you know, let's have sex. I'm funny.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not. It doesn't fly, really.
It's like the climate has changed since those jokes kind of came around. People are trying to practice respect, I think. Talk like a person. That's the best pickup line. Speak like a human being and not like you're a joke book from 1997.
Oh, man. The amount of jokes from the 80s and 90s which were about, like, wives, mother-in-laws,
oh my God, it's awful.
girlfriends. That whole, like, heteronormative, the old ball and chain, trouble and strife, it's so passé now. It's so inappropriate to think that it's going to work.
It's so bad. It's like the freaking ride in Disneyland used to make a joke like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Jungle Cruise. You know the Jungle Cruise?
I'm not familiar.
Jungle Cruise is a ride where it's one of their water rides. Everybody climbs into a boat. It's these big boats.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a skipper, and he'll like take you through this thing. And there's animatronic animals, and it's like you're going through this jungle of like of animals. You're seeing all these different scenarios of wildlife or whatever. It's funny. The ride has evolved quite a bit because it used to be, in its like early days, it was the same set of jokes every single time, right?
Oh, I see.
Because they realized that people aren't like regular Disney goers. Like a Disney trip was a much bigger deal back then. So if you heard the same jokes like with like 12 years in between them, it's like, oh, that's funny. But once people started to just like write down the jokes and like make them all the time, like there's
Yeah.
one point in the ride where you go behind a waterfall and he goes, ladies and gentlemen, it's the eighth wonder of the world, it's the backside of water.
Nice.
That's the big, it's a dumb, super dumb puns like that. And one of the regular jokes that they would make every single time is there was this little stretch where there were two giant animatronic elephants. There was one on the left, and then you go a little further, there's one on the right. And at the left one, he goes, oh yeah, it's the second most dangerous animal in the world, the what so-and-so elephant from like this region. And then he pulls up to the next one, he goes, and this is the most dangerous animal in the world, the other elephant's mother-in-law. And it's like, oh, dude, like you can't. And they canned it. They don't say that joke anymore because you can't do that.
Yeah,
you can't. And now they give it's fun. They give the skippers, they call them. They give them a little bit more freedom with their jokes. And sometimes you can go on that ride and like someone will actually be like very funny, like a well thought out like little routine based off of the animatronics. But
yeah, someone who's got a little Type 5 in their back pocket. They can just yeah. That's cool. I think that kind of thing, you just get a natural progression away from like the way the worse people react to your pickup lines or your like sexist jokes. The more people just don't do them. But there is
that's right.
There is still a slice of society that thinks those kind of things are hilarious. Unfortunately,
I don't. Not in my age bracket. I don't meet anybody around my age that thinks that's funny anymore, which is good. That's progress.
That is good. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. You want to move on to the next one? Next Tohawkism?
Oh, yeah. The next Tohawk question was, what is one of your guilty pleasures? Which we touched on a little bit earlier.
We did. Can I give a strike two?
Yeah.
The film Billy Madison.
Okay.
The film
That's
Billy
not that
Madison.
bad.
It's we as a family, the seven of us, my parents, myself, and my four younger siblings, have seen that film an absurd amount of times, and we quote it all the time. We always make quotes from the entire film, and we were like, okay, we quote this movie so much that we're going to sit down, we're going to watch this movie, and I got a whiteboard, and I put a tally mark every time there was a line that we regularly quote enough to be like, oh, there's one. The number, Kente, was 167 lines.
Wow.
167.
Guilty or not, that's definitely a pleasure there. That's a passion.
It's just, I don't know why. It's not a good movie. Like, we know it's bad, but it's like, it's just some dumb, stupid Adam Sandler humor that makes us laugh.
Yeah.
And we quote it literally more than any film.
To confuse things a bit further, to dip back towards the Della questions, this whole thing came up because Della is a fan of Adam Sandler movies, and I, in general, am not.
Oh, her favorite film of all time is an Adam Sandler movie. It's The Wedding Singer.
Absolutely, and I never begrudge anybody their enjoyment, but I tend to not tell people that I don't like popular things. So that's a good way of putting it. Rather than having a guilty pleasure, I think for me, like, I'm not a big Disney fan, just in general. There are some good movies, but like in general, it's all just not my thing. And people are surprised. They go, but it's Disney. And don't you want to go to Disneyland? And like, it's all amazing. And I'm like, not really. So when you asked whether I was familiar with the Drunk Cruise, I'm like, no, I don't know any of the rides are at Star Wars. I mean, it's Star Wars at Disneyland.
Here's the I think this is where the divide is. Did you grow up with Disney? Like as a young kid, did you watch Disney? You did, really, and you grew up not liking it. That's funny.
I saw The Lion King in the cinema on my 10th birthday.
Oh, wow.
That was like absolutely bang in the formative childhood years, right? Just didn't quite make the impact it did in other people. I don't know.
Because people my age at least are very much like, if you grew up with it and you watched it as a little kid and it was like formative for you, you like it, and if not, you didn't. But I get it, right? Like I'm a Disney person. I'm a big Disneyland fan. Let's put it that way. I love theme parks and intricate Disney rides. I love Disney. I've been to Disneyland like 18 times and I'm only 22. Like I've been there many times. I love it to death. Also, I live in California, which is like, it's a lot easier to get there. I don't live in like Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where it's like you have to fly there or whatever. But still,
not to call out our Baton Rouge, Louisiana listeners.
Sure, all 0 of them.
Probably.
but you know what I mean? It's like I'm very close, and I was able to go there a lot when I was a little kid because my parents loved it too. So that's kind of where my nostalgia for Disney kind of permeated, is the theme park.
Yeah.
But I get it. Like, back to your original statement, like, I do feel an anxiety when bringing up in conversation that a thing that is well liked I dislike,
Yeah.
because I grew up, especially with people I like went to high school with and stuff, I grew up with massive contrarians who think it's like a part of their personality to dislike things that are well liked and like things that are well disliked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like an aspect of human beings that I just can't stand. So I don't want to be that person to be like, oh, well, I didn't like so and so. But it's like, I try and keep balance between respecting my actual opinion on something and like making sure I'm not doing it just because people like it, which I think is shitty.
Yeah, there's definitely like that recurring philosophy of like, it's cool to not care.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if you care about something too much, then you're a nerd or whatever, and I think that has worn off somewhat, and people just generally now, it's cooler to be like, hey, I like what I like, and this is what I'm into. But when you want to admit that you don't like something that's super popular, originally you would have been like a hipster, like, oh, I'm only into the cutting edge, whatever. But kind of now it's the other way around. Now you're like, why not?
Right.
What's
that's fair.
the problem? It's great. Yeah, and obviously I would support not judging people either way, but there are things like I would never walk up to someone and be like, hi, my name's Kinte, nice to meet you, can I get you a drink? I hate Disney. And they'd be like, excuse me. It's like, it's never going to be the first thing you lead with, because you're
100%.
So maybe that's the worst pickup line, is just admit all the popular things you really don't like straight up front. Like, I don't like the Beatles. That's one I hear a lot.
That's cutting out a lot of conversation.
Yeah. But what I mean is that people are concerned about admitting that they don't like the Beatles, because people who do are like, how can you not? They're fundamental. They're influential. They're instrumental. They're all these, they are a landmark in music history. But like,
see, that I think is another generational divide, where people my age, when I was growing up, were stoked to announce that they did not like the Beatles. They're like, I don't get it, blah blah blah. And it's like, I understand if it's really not your thing, and like you genuinely just don't like that kind of music, or you just don't like the music that they make. I get it. Have your opinion and respect it, but don't do it just because they're like one of the biggest rock and roll bands of all time. Like, don't. They're huge, right? Don't do it because they're huge. Do it because you don't like it. It's frustrating.
I'm resisting so hard right now mentioning people who haven't read the King Chronicles, because they get told to read it by me and a lot of my friends, and the more we tell them, the less they want to. It's like it's like an anti-hype thing. If it's hyped up, it's more pressure to like it, and then you don't want to do it at all. And I can understand that. But like, when someone comes up to me and they say, "Oh my god, I love this thing," I want to check it out. Like, genuinely, I will happily be like, "Hey, if it's popular, it's got to be popular for a reason, right?"
It's always been important to me. I've always taken it very seriously when someone is like, hey, here's a thing that I like that I think you'll like. Like, I see that as a huge respect. So
yes.
I will always try it. And if I super totally hate it, then it's like, whatever. I still consumed something. Like, we watched, oh my God, I'm going to talk about movies again. I won't name the name of the movie. We watched a movie, Della and I and a couple other people, that other than one of the people in the group, most of us really didn't like. And Della was very apologetic. She's like, I'm really sorry. Like, I wouldn't have picked the movie if I'd known that it was going to be great. And then I thought to myself, and I was like, no, absolutely not. Every film I see, whether it's a 1 out of 10, a 5 out of 10, or a 10 out of 10, like, hones my opinion on film. And I feel the same way about music. I feel the same way about books. I feel everything, every piece of media. It's like, everything I consume is not wasted time. That's just further honing the edge of what you like and dislike in media. And I love that. That's why I consume so much of it. That's why I, in my adulthood, at least, do my best to consume as much of it as I can.
Absolutely.
I think that's super important.
Yeah, it's I don't know if I told this story on the podcast. I don't think I have. I had an experience where I was with some friends. They were watching the latest Twilight movie, had just come out on DVD.
Okay.
Stop me if I have. And
I don't think so.
we were hanging out, and this guy I knew and his sister were quite into Twilight, and I was with a couple of other friends, and they sat down in what they had was like a reptile house shed lounge. It was like a big quality like wooden structure in the garden, which had terrariums around the outside and a big TV and an Xbox and a coffee table, a hangout place. And it was in the evening, and the lights in the room were turned off, but the lights from the terrariums were still on. So I was able to sit at one end of the sofa and read my book and ignore the fact they were going to be watching Twilight.
Okay.
Because I hadn't seen it, but I didn't want to see it. I think it was the second movie, and I was like, I don't care. Like, I know I don't like the franchise already. And about 3 minutes into the movie, the timer on the terrarium lights clicked off, and we were plunged into complete darkness. I had no choice but to watch Twilight for the next 2 hours.
Oh,
and like,
no.
I would count that as like wasted time because I knew I wouldn't like it. But I
Really?
agree with
That's
you
so
on the whole in
interesting.
general. Like, I don't need to, I will watch most things and get a contrasting view. Like, I'll watch bad movies to see how bad they are, but like, if it's like the second or third movie in a series I know I'm never going to watch, why bother? Like, it's just 2 hours of your time where you could be doing something else that you know you'll enjoy. And Twilight's that for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I was like, oh god, I don't remember how old I was when those books started becoming popular. Probably like 12, 13. And back then, you read a story like that, and you're like, wow, it's sweeping and romantic, and there's action and drama, and like you just get swept up in it. And now I'm like a person with opinions, and now I'm like, oh, never mind. Especially the movies. The movies are hard to return to.
Absolutely.
I was like seeing the interviews with Robert Pattinson, who played Edward, and seeing his just abject hatred for those films.
I don't blame him, because not only was he in a movie which was not a good adaptation of a not a good book, he was also at the center of a hurricane of adoring fans that he wanted nothing to do with, because he was like, I don't care about this IP, you know, and he was the main leading male, you know, the heartthrob.
It interests me when actors, or I think this happens even more with musicians, or music acts, bands, or whatever. The thing that made them popular, like the big thing that they did, they always later on in their career start to reject. Which is fascinating to me. Like I always found it weird that people would do that. The biggest example that I can think of is the song "I Write Sins Not Tragedies" by Panic at the Disco.
Oh yeah,
and how much that band, well, it's just one guy at this point, but how much that band at this point hates that song.
Yeah, you're having to play it at every show because everyone wants to hear it, but you've heard it every other day for the past 12 years.
I get it. I totally do. I understand getting sick of it, but also like, don't act like that thing you made a long time ago now sucks and you hate it and you shouldn't have made it. You can be sick of it because you've been playing it for 15 years or whatever, but you know, it's the thing that made you your money, you know, it's just the thing that made you big. Like,
absolutely.
You know.
Toho suggested a game of sorts, which would be I believe that the pitch was you take the name of a movie and you pick a word that would redefine it, such that if you put the word sword in pretty much any movie's name, it becomes a fantasy movie. And the idea being that you change the name of the movie, you pick a word to replace, and then it becomes a new concept, and you discuss what that movie would be like. Which is a way of talking about movies without just boring people about, oh, I saw a movie and I really liked it.
Sure.
So the example we discussed was sword. So like, you know, Lord of the Rings might become Lord of the Swords or Sword of the Rings.
Sure.
Sword of the Rings would be a very odd movie to pitch. Like, there's a sword and there's some rings. Yeah, the swords of the rings. Like, someone melted down a bunch of rings and made it into a sword. And they just kill married couples or something. Like, what would I can't imagine what that concept would be.
It's so dark.
Whereas Lord of the Swords is a much more traditional fantasy movie, where it's just a guy who's got all the swords, or a big sword.
In my senior year in high school, we used to play this game, but it was a little different. I think you're thinking of like picking a word and adding it to a bunch of different films. We would always take films and change one word like very slightly, and it like changes the entire context of the film.
Yeah.
Like the biggest one one of the ones that I can remember, I should say, is Raiders of the Lost Park. Which is far less dramatic.
Yeah.
And then what's the other one? Oh, the fish element is another one.
Yes, it's the fifth element.
So it's a stupid game.
Well, that earth, air, fire, water, and fish. That's the fish element.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But yeah, that's
I like these games. I think it would be best served if listeners were to submit a subtly changed movie and ask us to interpret it.
That's such a good idea.
That way, it's not us sitting here going, well, how about we put the word corgi in the film, whatever, and trying to figure out something funny.
I love this, and I think we should expand it to more than just movies. I think it should be books.
Yeah.
I think it should be albums. I think it should be TV shows. I think it should be any kind of media that has like a name.
Absolutely.
And if you can think of one that you can just tweak a little bit and send it on to us, we will try and come up with like the pitch or like the outline, I suppose, of what that would be. That sounds hilarious.
Like that classic sitcom, The Golden Grills, which is about barbecues.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds like, those stupid shows where it's like competition shows of like who can make the best, I don't know, like tire iron or whatever. It's like hyper specific, like manufacture. That sounds like a barbecue manufacturing competition show.
It does. It really does.
Sounds awful.
Yeah. The Big Wang Theory. There's lots we can explore.
Oh my god, you just said the phrase "the Big Wang Theory" on a podcast that other people are going to listen to. I have to edit that. I'm going to hear that more than once.
But you'll never know what the show is because we're moving on.
Okay, yeah, we're shifting.
I think we should move on to cultural differences. Let's have the old...
Oh, let's do it.
I was going to say the old favourite. It's only been 4 episodes, but yeah, the old favourite back again.
Our old friend.
And we have had some submissions of suggestions for this. Mostly from my friend Alfie again, from my side.
Thank you, Alfie. Goodness.
Yeah, he's furnished me with not only some good suggestions, but also some little anecdotal go alongside, which is great. There is a British comedian TV host called Richard Osman. He's moderately popular. He's also an author these days on British TV. He's a large, bespectacled man who's quick with puns and facts and figures. He's a very smart gentleman, and he tweeted, just explained to a delighted American that we call crosswalks zebra crossings. She then asked what we call crossing guards, and I said lollipop ladies, and now she thinks I've made the whole thing up.
What
are
you talking about?
So when you say crosswalks, you're talking about like the lines on the road that help pedestrians cross the traffic, without jaywalking, which is also not a thing in the UK. We don't have jaywalking as a law. Ours are named after animals because zebra, black and white, kind of makes sense. But depending on the style, like some have an island in the middle with traffic lights, and some are just you cross when there's no traffic rather than like having to press a button or whatever. So we have zebra crossings, pelican crossings, toucan crossings, like different class, all named after like jungle animals.
Are you serious? You're lying.
Yeah.
This is a lie. This is a bit.
Nope. If you're in the UK and like you see school kids and you're worried about them, like the parents will say use a zebra crossing. Like it's a perfectly normal thing. We call them zebra crossings. It's normal.
Zebra Crossing and the Lollipop Ladies is a band that I have heard a song from. Like they are a 70s funk band that I have
Lollipop Ladies are called Lollipop Ladies because where you have a school setting where there are young kids, essentially not with a parent or guardian, they cross the road together, and the Lollipop Lady is a woman dressed in high-vis, reflective outfit, and she has a stop sign on a pole that looks
a crossing
like a
guard.
lollipop. And because the sign looks a little bit like a lollipop, and is traditionally a female role, they're called Lollipop Ladies.
Do you guys stop to think that that's like, as a culture, you decided that?
I think what
Like,
happens
you never
is,
just like chuckle to yourself, like, "Oh yeah, we call them lollipop face."
I think we do, and I think what happens is the colloquial name becomes the normal one, and then it gets Americanized into a more reasonable, like, why would we call it that? Because you haven't got the context of just everyone knows it. So,
Yeah.
like, we're not going to call it a zebra crossing. We're going to call it a crosswalk because it's where you walk when you cross. There's a lot of, like, real, like, literal, like you say sidewalk, whereas we say pavement because it's paved, but you say sidewalk because you walk at the side, you know?
Sure.
It all makes sense.
I think, yeah, that like pavement is more like focusing on the thing itself, and sidewalk is the thing you do on it,
Yes.
which I think that's a big divide. But just like I'm trying to think of something American that we call like a name for something that we call it that is like silly, but we don't realize it's silly because we say it all the time.
I can think of lots of differences, but I don't know whether you'd think they were silly or not. Well, let me run through a few. I can think of the classic boot versus trunk of your car.
Oh, you call it the boot? I've never heard that
the
before.
boot, and I don't know why we call it the boot, because trunk
Interesting.
comes from literally strapping a trunk to the back of your car,
Yeah.
and you would be able to then remove it. Like, that makes sense. Your luggage is actually in a trunk. I don't
Yeah, I
know
wonder
why
where
we
boot
call it
comes
boot.
from.
Let me have a look. Yeah, so we say boot and bonnet instead of trunk and hood.
Bonnet? Really?
Yeah, as in like
Both articles of clothing.
Yes, I guess that's it. Like, the boot goes at the back, but then you'd call the tires the boots, wouldn't you?
I
don't
mean,
know.
conceptually, yeah, but whatever.
But the bonnet, yeah, goes over the top of the front. You can see how that's like slightly clothing related.
Sure,
But
I get it.
I don't see them as weird in the American ones. I see them weird in the British ones, or at least less logical, less straightforward. I'm trying to think of others, like, just off the top of my head. There are so many. I mean, like you would say sucker for a lollipop, because you literally suck them.
I wouldn't say that. I don't think anybody after 1965 would say that.
Oh, what would you say?
Lollipop.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's always been lollipop for me.
I guess that's.
It was always like when your grandma, your super old grandma would give you a lollipop, she'd call it a sucker. Like, that was like the thing.
There's probably quite a skewing of British perception then towards, like, older American terms.
Yeah, totally.
And vice versa, I think, because a lot of young people are quite Americanized with social media and TV.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they'll know both terms, like sneakers versus trainers. You know,
Yeah, I mean, those both makes. I mean, actually, trainers make more sense to me than sneakers.
you're training them.
Yeah, I don't know what sneak means.
But then some people would just say running shoes, because that's what you do with them. You know.
A big debate within the United States on what to call things is the soda pop Coke debate. I am California. It's always been soda for me. I've never had anybody in my life ever call it a pop or a soda pop. That just sounds like, I don't know. That sounds like an old cartoon to me. But I know for a fact that there are people that call it pop. I know soda pop, and there are some regions where, like, it's just Coke.
Yeah,
which that's a brand.
So weird. Yeah, because I can understand, like, saying soda, but that's quite an American term to me. Mostly we either say fizzy drinks, or we say soft drinks. Or
yeah, soft drinks is a big one for us.
Or pop. We do also say pop, just as, like, that's more of a kidsy term, I guess. Like, do you want some pop? Rather than, like, oh, can I get a soft drink, please? You know, yeah, but Coke is Coke. Like, I have heard people talk about this where they say, like, oh yeah, so do you want a Coke? Or, like, what kind do you want? Sprite, 7-Up? It's like, no, that's
so funny. That is an interesting thing that was brought to my attention recently that I never thought of, is that there are a lot of things, at least in America, I can't speak for the UK or anywhere else, but there are a lot of things that we call by a common name that are just brand names. Like, Coke is a big one that people use for soda, like Band-Aid. I didn't know until very late in my life that is a brand name bandage.
Yeah, we don't call them.
I didn't know that. And then Kleenex is the other one for like a tissue.
Yeah.
Like, can you hand me a Kleenex is like a super, super common phrase. Here, anyways, and that's a brand. I never thought about it that way.
We have a lot of those. Instead of vacuum cleaner, we tend to say Hoover, which was a popular.
Hoover's a brand?
Yeah.
I thought that it was just like a thing you called it.
No, yeah. And ballpoint pens we tend to call biros because they were
Oh, I've never heard that.
the inventor, I believe, was called biro. You know.
Mhm.
Yeah. So do you know what we call band-aids in the UK?
No, what do you call it?
Take a wild guess. You're never gonna guess. But I'm just curious. Like,
I don't know.
what does your American brain assume that our stupid English sensibilities are gonna call them?
What is it, like just slap on a banana hammock, cover up that cut with a banana hammock.
Not even close. We call them plasters, which I think is like related.
That's a
to
weird
like,
term.
Like a
Ew,
bandage.
that's gross.
You plaster on put plaster on for a broken arm, that kind of thing.
That makes me think of like, I don't know. That makes me think of like putting a bandage over your arm like you're fixing a wall. Like it's like,
yeah,
it's not a thing. It's like you're healing. That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know why they're called plasters, but
that's funny. I've never heard that before.
Yes, yes, that's another thing my friend had to deal with when she was looking after British kids. You know, was like they'd be like, "Can I get a plaster?" And they'd be like, "A what?
Like, what are you talking about? Plaster of
Cut my
Paris?"
finger. Yeah.
That's funny. We got a couple more from Tohawk that are some good things that we haven't mentioned yet in terms of cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
We can just do them real quick because I don't think there's like a lot of conversation around them, and then we can move on. And then we'll save the rest of them for another time. A big difference between the way I think and the way you think culturally is how old is old and how far away is far.
I also have this suggestion, especially related to history of buildings and things.
I live in a really big country that isn't very old, and you live in a very small country that is insanely old, that has things from hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
That's true. I have a fun story about this. When you say old, to me, it's really contextual. Like, if you talk about an old building, I'd think like at least 400 years old, I would say, is old. Because new could easily be like the 1920s, you know? Like,
sure.
So to me, 100 years is new. Whereas in America, I imagine that's less the case.
Oh, yeah. If a building was built before like 1950, I think that'd be considered an old building.
Yeah.
Like that house is old. And then like before the 1900s, forget about it. Like that's like, how's that thing even standing? Like that kind of thing.
So I got a question for you. How old is an old book to you? If someone says, "Oh, that's an old book," is that like 1970s, 60s?
I don't know. It's tough to say. I mean, like,
yeah,
my mind goes to. I mean, like, you guys have like the Book of Kells in Ireland, which is like insanely ancient, but that's like a thing in a museum. That's not like a book you can find on the shelf. Like, I could go into a bookstore and find a copy of, I don't know, some book from like the 1800s that was reprinted in 1960, and it's super old, right? The pages are weathered, like it's got that old book smell, but like that's old, I guess. But
well, this is a perfect setup because I was very lucky to be invited to a cousin of mine's wedding a couple of years ago and meet some absolutely fascinating people from their side of the family, which I hadn't met before. And one of them was this gentleman who I won't mention specifically, but he's quite high up in some of the more ancient workings of the British monarchy. Like he's not royalty, but he's in charge of one of those like mysterious organizations that does stuff with old books and manuscripts and like makes everything continue rolling like it used to do in the old days. Like it's all the jobs that like they pay people like £1 for these days because it's not a proper job anymore. It's like a title and a robe, and like they wander around saying weird stuff now and again.
Okay.
He dressed up like a playing card and like goes in parades and things.
Okay.
But fascinating guy, and he trained as a lawyer and has just been steeped in this old world royalist stuff his whole life. And first time I met him, and we were shaking hands, and he was saying, "Who you were?" You know, he speaks like that, and you can hardly tell what he's saying. He's so British. And someone asked him what kind of books he read, and he said, "Oh, nothing very modern. Usually just old books." And he said, and someone said to him, "What do you consider old?" And he said, "Oh, anything 5th century and before.
5th century?
To put it in context, Book of Kells is 9th century. So he's talking about like real like basic like historical finds and stuff like that.
God.
It boggled my mind. I was just like, who is this man and how do people like this exist?
Our country, the country I live in, was founded in the 16th century. Or no,
yeah.
18th? I always forget if it's one before or one after. The 16th century is the 1700s. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, you're right. The 1600s is the 17th century.
Oh shit, I got it backwards then. It's the 18th century.
Because
even older.
You count all of the years until you hit 17, and then it's the 17th century.
You're right. That's true. So
yeah.
Anyway, the 1700s, and he's talking about what is the 5th century? The 400s.
Yeah. So,
oh my God.
This is a man who has made a study of historical families and like heraldry and stuff. So he has to read a lot of old stuff.
Yeah.
And he's just so steeped in that he can't. Like, you can imagine reading Twilight. You know, like what would it mean to him? It's just such nonsense. like what?
What would that do in his brain?
Like I don't think he has time for any kind of fictional nonsense. You know,
no way.
He was a fascinating guy, and I met him at a party before the wedding, and then after the wedding and the reception, I met a different guy. This is a totally different guy. He was from Australia. I think he was the mother of the bride's brother-in-law or something. Real tenuous link. Like I had no relation to him whatsoever. And he walked up to me and he said, one of the both kind of mixed compliment, I guess. But he said, as soon as I saw you, I thought, there's a guy who's going to have an interesting conversation. And I thought, is that good? Or
I think that's good.
But we started talking about like old British landmarks like Stonehenge, you know, and we were in a historical castle at the time, and we started talking about stuff. And he said, "Yeah, I've been all over France. I've looked at the henges down there, all the standing stones and stuff. It's amazing." And I said, "You want to go and talk to that man over there?" And I pointed him at the gentleman, and he said, "Why?" And I said, "He's such an interesting person, and he's so smart. Every question he asks you, you can feel he's like measuring you with these questions, and he's so out of touch with anything I'm in touch with. It's absolutely fascinating." So I sent the guy off, and he went and spoke to this other man, and came back, and he said, "Oh, you're absolutely right." He said, "That was the most fascinating conversation I've ever had," which I thought was amazing. Like in terms of like what we're talking about here, what you think of old, what you think of far. Like there are things and there are people in England that still live partially in that world of like the continuity of those family trees and the continuity of those jobs and those titles come all the way down the line, and there's someone who is the current lord of whatever, or bishop this, or and they live in that world, and then to them old is way back.
I could just imagine that guy sitting there at the table at the wedding, just like with a book of Iatrology from like the 3rd century.
Right. And just being like, interesting, this cheese is nice. And that's who he is. Oh, it's amazing.
So funny.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's incredible. And then the other half of that question was, how far away is far? And this was one that I directly experienced when I was in Ireland. We met up with one of my dad's coworkers who lives in Cork, Ireland, and we took a train down to Cork from Dublin, spent the day there. And he was driving us to where we were going, like towards the center of Cork from the train station. And he's like, "Sorry, that took so long." And it was like 17 minutes, the drive. And I was like, "What are you talking about? That's like my drive to the grocery store. Like I drive like 35 to 40 minutes to work every day." Like it's not. And that was interesting to me, of like, you guys live in a small country, and you guys do. I mean, yours is much bigger, but you still, like, things are not far away from each other. Like,
not at all.
What is a long drive for you? Like, what's a long distance drive from like one town to another, like on a trip? What would you consider that?
Well, it's interesting. It's a perfect example right there. If I just estimated Dublin to Cork and underestimated it by about half, because I thought, oh, that's a fair distance, like down the coast and across the country. It's got to be 100 miles, and it was 160. I would consider it a long way to London from me, which is about 3 hours drive.
Okay.
But like, yeah, the nearest like big major city to me is like an hour away. I would call that a long drive. Like, oh, you
Yeah,
gotta go
I mean
all the way in there.
that's
like,
inconvenient. You can't just
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna head over to whatever that town is for dinner. Like that's too far. You can't.
Right, exactly. But I think there are parallels between like just suburban America, where you have to drive to go to like
Mm.
wherever it is you're going, and also rural England, where you live in a small town. There's probably a local shop in your village, but like if you want to go anywhere major, you're gonna have to drive half an hour, 40 minutes somewhere.
Yeah,
Like,
that's fair.
so I do think it translates a bit, but when you talk about like, oh, it's a special trip, like you'll go to your grandma's for Christmas and you only see her once a year, a long trip for us would be like 4, 5, 6 hours, like going north to south in the country. Whereas in America, that's like, oh, it took us 3 days. Like, we drove across America.
Well, I've never risked that. I am cool with flying.
Yes,
I think flying is a lot more just like acceptable here. I mean, maybe not acceptable, but like flying for you means like I'm probably going to a different country. Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to fly from
make sense.
one place to another.
Yeah, and internally, it wouldn't make sense for me to like drive to London and get a flight to Edinburgh and then like drive into the city, because the drive is probably about the same length as the flight.
Yeah, totally.
So you might as well have just driven up the country or taken a train.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's a train that goes straight up England from London to Edinburgh, non-stop sort of thing. So you can just, I think it takes about 8 hours.
For context, where I live right now in Sacramento, San Francisco is probably 2.5 hours away.
Right.
And Los Angeles is anywhere from 6 to 7. And that's like normal. That's nothing. I know like Phoenix, where Della lives, that's a 13-hour drive right there.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you would do that over flying, other than maybe like, I don't know, if you don't like flying or have fear of it, or you just rather save the money or spend your money on gas rather than plane tickets. I get it. Flying is a hassle, but for my money at least, I would never pick the driving route unless it was like anywhere outside of California.
Interesting.
And there's also, you mentioned like there are places rurally that
are isolated. Like
there's one shop, and there are states that are that way in the United States.
Yes.
And even in California, I think a big misconception of people outside of the country is like California is very concentrated because there's a lot of people here. We're like the 5th biggest economy in the world, and we're a single state. But there are huge portions of California that are just not desolate, but just rural. Like there are huge stretches of just absolute nothing in the middle of this state. And once you get closer to the coast, you get a little bit more concentrated. But like the drive from where I am in central north-ish California down to like LA, like Disneyland, it's like that's like going through a few cities, a bunch of absolutely nothing, like 4 hours of nothing, of just flat roads and farms, and then Los Angeles. Like it's there's a lot of spaced out stuff here.
That's interesting, because I definitely do have that impression of like, if you scale up England into America, it would be a lot more crowded. Because while we are small, we have quite a lot of people, and there are rural areas.
Right.
Most places you go, you're going to hit a small town or a village somewhere, and there'll be another little set of like a post office and a shop and a newsagents and a cafe. Like you've actually got to put some effort in to find an area where there's nothing at all.
How many people are in the UK? Like 65, 70 million?
Let me check. 67.22.
So
2020.
California has 30. Around 30 to 33 million, if memory serves. So we have half of your country's population.
39.35.
You said 39, almost 40?
Yeah. As of
so
2020.
It's over half of your entire country's population, and we're just one state. So it's like the population is wildly different, spread out wise. It's a bigger state. It's a much bigger state. But
California is almost twice the area of the UK.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Absolutely, it's a big old state.
It's so funny that like the going from the top to the bottom of your country is like staying in the same state as mine. Like that's so weird to me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because everyone knows that England's that small little, the UK is that small little set of islands, but the actual like comparison in population density and that sort of thing is really interesting. Because London is obviously a huge city, and
Oh yeah,
similar to,
yeah.
I don't know, compared to LA, what the population is like. What percentage is the LA population of California? It's
Well, let's
almost
see.
4 million.
Of what did you say? Los Angeles is 4 million.
Yeah.
So it'd be
So
what is it? A tenth? 10%?
yeah, and London is almost 9 million, so not quite a tenth.
Okay.
So LA is more densely populated than London is compared to the rest of California, compared to the rest of the UK. But in general, it's probably similar. There are areas where there are less, and areas where there are more.
Yeah.
And cities that are chunky but not LA.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just sat back and realized that we're an hour and 10 minutes into this episode, and half of it has been questions and half of it has been cultural differences.
I think that's all right. I
Yeah,
like
no, that's fine
this.
with me.
I think when we look at what we've got remaining, yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff we can just do next week.
Yeah, we'll just tack it on to the next one. I like it. Do we want to quickly go through our end of show stuff and stuff that we definitely have to get out in this episode?
Yeah, I do have some apologies, which, as I said last week, I actually noticed after I'd said them, and the moment had gone past, I was like, oh shit, I think I got that wrong.
Oh, that's right. And I told you to save it for this episode, didn't I?
Yeah. One of them is I said Robert Opie, and I meant Julian Opie.
Oh, whoops.
We were talking about your cat, and I said, oh, is it named after the artist? And I meant to say Julian Opie.
Oh, that's right. You did say that. That's funny. I never
Robert Opie was a collector of brand packaging and ran a museum near where some of my family lives, which is why I'm familiar with the name.
Oh.
He's not a famous person.
How specific?
He just owned the Robert Opie collection, so it's in
okay.
my head. And I also said, I think I said something about Riker, the character from Star Trek.
Yeah.
And I was unsure about his middle name. I think I said William T. Riker, and I thought I got it wrong because it should be James T. Kirk, but it actually is also T. His middle name begins with a T. So
are you correcting your correction as it's happening?
I after I'd said it, I thought, oh shit, I think I got that wrong. But now I look at it, I think I got it right. So I mean,
so we still don't know
exactly what I said. I think I said William T. Riker, so I think I was right.
It's William Howard Taft. I don't know.
Yeah, because Riker is famously, one of the American presidents.
Sure. We should give credit to Feus. Thank you, Feus.
Absolutely.
We love you to death for our intro and outro music. Like I said, working on a more permanent solution, but as of right now, we love it. And like I said last time, or one of the episodes, I genuinely, it just plays in my head all the time. It's just going through my head all the time. So
it's great.
Thanks. It's lovely.
I've been thoroughly enjoying it, and at some point we'll become famous and rich enough that we'll be able to pay royalties for it.
Yes, absolutely. And then I'm leaving the outro to you, man. You argued with me about it. What do you want to do?
Well, first of all, I would like to say, have we evolved? And I think this episode is it's a great example of how we're really trying very hard. we really want to fit these features in and make them streamlined, but I mean, this is still definitely a work in progress. So yeah, a little bit in there, but
and we just talk. We need to shut up. Like, for two guys that run a podcast, we need to stop talking.
Absolutely,
like we just keep on going about stupid shit.
And I think some people would argue and say that's what I like about it, but I do think there's definitely a limit.
I really hope so.
So for this outro, I think I would like to formulate. You can tell me whether you like this or not, as can the listeners. But I'd like to formulate a sort of structure to it, and I'd like to say what we can look forward to next time. Because as we start talking about switching features in and out, that reminds me. As talking about next time, we need to save the scores for cultural differences.
Oh yeah, that's right. We set up the
'Cause the
score
first
thing, and
time
then
we
we
did
never
that.
actually did it. Well, here's the thing: we didn't debate things, right? We didn't like
I don't know.
actually actively go over like what's better. Well,
Crosswalk, zebra crossing.
oh shit, we
I
did.
think.
Who gets the point?
I think what we'll have
I
to
think
do.
we do. But whatever. We should. We'll worry about it later, I guess.
What we'll do is we'll sit down and figure it out behind the scenes, and next time at the beginning of the
We'll
section,
release the official score.
Right. So I think at the beginning of cultural differences, we should say, after much deliberation and audience feedback from last week, the scores are, and then we'll carry on. I think saying what we can look forward to next time is a positive thing, because we can say we're going to do some more questions and we're going to do some more cultural differences.
Yeah.
And we're also going to actually try and sneak a word into the episode.
I got
this
mine.
time, I had one and I didn't manage to say it. So
I did it. Did you catch it?
Really? No, I have no idea what it was.
Really?
Yeah.
Should I tell you next episode or should I tell you now?
I want to know what it is now.
It was Iatrology.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's like it's like a very old word for the study of medicine.
I heard you pull that out of your ass, and I just thought, yeah, that's appropriate. That is likely.
Yeah, no, I just use like this like weird word generator that gives me a bunch of really long, hyper specific words. So
I was hoping to say Mesoamerican at some point.
oh, that's so good. That's so
but
good. I would have been
didn't
like,
quite
that's the
manage to.
one. I would have got that in a heartbeat.
Well, I'm glad I didn't do it then. So yeah, if anybody has any more suggestions for either of those sections that we're definitely going to do next week, or any more suggestions for new sections, we'll try and make room for them.
Yep.
And then I think we should just finish with our classic, I'm John Kinte.
And I am Holly Davenport.
And then I say, and remember, be your best at the only kind of yourself that it can be. Since it's not in the intro, and we just fade out on that delightful, logical, inspiring, perfectly sensible sentence.
I like it. It's clean. Here's the issue, though. We're engaged in this right now. Did what we just do? Was that it? Is the music playing? Are we done?
Yeah, the podcast's ending right now.
Can they hear us? Can they?
No, we are ghosts in the wind.
Are we gone?
I hope so.
I'm
not
floating away. Bye. See you next time.
See you next week.